You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
So Stanford's secondary is weak and their pass rush is weak. Before we get to that, I would like to mention that I saw on Twitter before recording this podcast that Emily Liker mentioned that in a radio interview with Fran Brown, that Justice Ross Simmons looks like he's going to be available for this game against Stanford. Now, for those that may not know, Justice Ross Simmons is the Colorado State transfer that we really had high hopes for, but he has been dealing with a hamstring injury, a nagging hamstring injury for quite some time. So if he goes, I'm very curious to see how Syracuse will use him in their offense, considering they got a boatload of weapons right now. So where is he going to fit in? I don't know, but it's certainly something to look out for tomorrow night if Justice Ross Simmons is available to play. Overall, Stanford's got one really good corner. They got one. His name is Colin Wright, and in 2023, he was Pac-12 honorable mention for Freshman Defensive Player of the Year. Yes, I know it's a mouthful. Freshman Defensive Player of the Year, honorable mention. What does that tell you? Colin Wright is a pretty good corner for Stanford. But aside from that, they don't got much else. They really don't. And I mean that respectfully. I got stats to back this up. Stanford has let up nearly 280 passing yards per game through 2 weeks. That includes a game against Cal Poly a couple weeks ago. Cal Poly, the immortal Cal Poly, one of the football's greatest powers. I'm kidding. 280 passing yards per game through 2 games. So for some context for you guys, because I'm all about the context. It's one thing to say a stat. You need to know what it means. That is second worst in the ACC. 280 passing yards per game. It's only behind Wake Forest. Yikes. That's not very good. Second worst pass defense in the ACC. Ooh. And it's bottom 15 in the entire country. In the entire FBS of 134 teams, they are a bottom 15 secondary in the country. Actually, their strength of their defense is their linebacking unit. So maybe throwing the ball over the middle of the field could be challenging, especially in the short, intermediate passing game. But at the same time, if you just run play action, you force the linebackers to sell out against the run, well, then you could throw over top of them and the middle of the field can be wide open for you. So you can solve that pretty easily with Stanford's talented linebackers. Another reason why this Stanford secondary isn't very good is really on their defensive front. Generating pressure is so critical in football. You want to know the secret defense? It's much easier said than done, but it is the secret playbook for any defense, minus really the 85 Bears who just like to blitz 8 players every time. The secret? Generating pressure with 4 and dropping 7 into coverage. If you can do that on a consistent basis, teams are not going to be able to throw on you. With this Stanford team, they cannot generate pressure. They have 2 sacks through 2 games. 1 in each game. 1 against TCU, 1 against Cal Poly. So they can't really generate a lot of pressure on the quarterback. Pretty similar to Georgia Tech. We talked about in the lead up to the Georgia Tech game how, hey, a lot of people are saying that the Syracuse defense isn't great, right, against Ohio. But Georgia Tech's defense has not gotten a lot of pressure on the quarterback. How's that going to fare against Syracuse's passing attack? Well, we saw what happened. If you don't have a strong secondary, you definitely need to be able to generate pressure with 4 guys. They can't really do that at a high level. TCU threw the ball 42 times against Stanford. 42 times. And Stanford got 1 sack. Cal Poly threw the ball 30 times. And Stanford only managed 1 sack. That's a pretty ugly ratio. 2 sacks for 72 passing attempts. That's 1 out of every 36 passing attempts. There's going to be a sack. That is not very good for this Stanford secondary. So what do I expect? I think that Kyle McCord is going to have plenty of time behind this offensive line, which so far has been very, very good for Syracuse through 2 games. It has been exceptional. We haven't really had to talk about the offensive line because they have been really good. This is me giving them their flowers. They have been really good. I expect them to be good in this game once again. Kyle McCord's going to have ample time to throw. Their receivers should have a lot of very favorable one-on-one matchups aside from whoever's going against Colin Wright. So I think this is a game where Syracuse has the clear edge in passing offense versus passing defense. Syracuse, by the way, for some more stats for you guys all out there, for my stats nerds, do you know that Syracuse has the third best passing attack in the entire country? That's right. I looked it up. 370 passing yards per game. That is third best in the entire country. It just so happens also to be second in the ACC because Miami is within our conference and they have an even better passing attack. A bottom 15 pass defense against a top 3 passing offense. It's pretty favorable in Syracuse's favor, wouldn't you say? Now, not to get too cocky, obviously our run defense was pathetic in week 1 against Ohio, going against the vaunted Georgia Tech rushing attack, and we shut them down pretty good. Syracuse shut them down. So it can be done. These are Division I athletes. But on paper, this seems like a mismatch where Syracuse should have ample time to throw the ball with favorable one-on-one matchups on the outside. And I can give you guys a bold prediction right now. I think that Zeed Haynes is going to have a 50-plus yard touchdown on a play-action play. That's right, I said it. I think that's what's going to happen. I don't know the exact design of the play, but I think it's going to be play-action, 50-plus yards down the field to Zeed Haynes for a touchdown. Now, because I said that, watch it actually happen on Friday night against Stanford, but then Zeed Haynes gets tackled at the 1-yard line. Just watch. It's going to happen. And I'm going to be like, well, I was 99% correct. That's my bold prediction for you guys out there, for those that are into bold predictions. So overall, Syracuse is a very favorable matchup with Stanford's secondary. They have to be able to attack it at a consistent level. This is one of those games where you can throw the ball 35, 40 times and not have to rely so much on the running game. I expect a big day from Kyle McCord and this passing offense.